The Parker family had been dreaming of this vacation for months. For Ethan Parker, an FBI agent, life was usually a whirlwind of high-stakes operations, long hours, and constant vigilance. Time off was a rare commodity. But he and his wife, Lena, had decided it was time for a break. They had planned a family trip to a lavish resort on the beach, a place where they could unwind, reconnect, and experience the kind of peace that always seemed elusive to them. However, what was supposed to be a serene getaway soon spiraled into a series of unsettling encounters. As the family settled by the pool, with their two children splashing and playing nearby, things began to feel off. Ethan, who rarely had time to relax, took in the sound of the waves and the sight of his children. Unaware of the storm that was about to erupt, a security guard approached them with suspicion, asking for their room number. While this could have been a simple procedure, the tension in the guard's tone told a different story. This wasn't the first time the Parkers had experienced this kind of treatment, but the feeling of being unfairly judged based on their appearance never got easier. As Lena picked up on the subtle shift in attitude, she felt the discomfort creeping in. The guards seemed uninterested in verifying their room number and instead insisted they leave the pool area. The situation quickly escalated from minor discomfort to blatant discrimination. As more security staff arrived, and the situation became more tense, it was clear to Lena that this was no ordinary misunderstanding. She confronted the guards, asking if they were targeting her family because of how they looked. The guards' evasiveness only fueled her suspicions, and the day, which had started so peacefully, was beginning to unravel. As the guards continued their insistence that the Parkers leave the pool area, Ethan remained composed, trying to defuse the situation. But Lena, who had always fought for justice in her legal career, couldn't sit back and let her family be treated like this. The situation had escalated, and now their vacation was overshadowed by the unsettling behavior of the staff. What followed next was a heated exchange between Lena and the younger security guard. His dismissive attitude and continued insinuations that the Parkers were not fit to be at the resort stoked a fire within Lena. Her frustration and anger boiled over, but she remained calm enough to confront the guard, challenging him on why they were being treated differently from other guests. It wasn't just the blatant racism that hurt. It was the disrespect and disregard for the dignity of her family. As the guard's attitude grew more hostile, Lena demanded to speak with his manager. But the response she received was not what she had hoped. They were still being harassed, and as the situation intensified, the guards called in backup, local police officers. The moment of truth arrived when local police officers showed up at the scene. Despite Ethan calmly identifying himself as an FBI agent, the officers persisted in their actions, continuing to treat him as a suspect. The Parkers were no longer just dealing with security guards. They were now facing the full force of institutional power, and their world felt like it was collapsing around them. Ethan was handcuffed in front of his children, a sight that filled the entire pool area with tension. Guests watched in silence as the situation unfolded, many recording the incident, but no one intervened. Ethan remained composed, his professional training allowing him to control his emotions, but inside, he felt the sting of humiliation. He had spent his career fighting for justice, only to find himself on the receiving end of an injustice that hit too close to home. Lena, too, was visibly shaken, but she refused to back down. As a lawyer, she understood the weight of the situation and knew that the officers were abusing their power. She wasn't just fighting for herself or Ethan. She was fighting for her children's future, ensuring that they wouldn't grow up in a world where this kind of injustice was acceptable. Once the situation was diffused and the handcuffs were removed, the Parkers knew that their fight wasn't over. Ethan and Lena were determined to ensure that this incident would not be forgotten. They began making plans to take legal action against the resort and the officers involved. Knowing that they couldn't let this abuse of power slide, Lena immediately began calling her colleagues to prepare for a lawsuit. She was a skilled lawyer, but this time, the fight was personal. As she arranged the next steps, Ethan stood by her side, his resolve growing stronger with every passing moment. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for everyone who had experienced similar injustice. The legal process would be long, but the Parkers were determined to see it through. With Lena's expertise and Ethan's connections within the FBI, they knew that their fight had the potential to shine a light on the deeper issues of discrimination and abuse of power that plague Societe. Why? In the end, the Parkers' story became a symbol of resistance against systemic racism and the abuse of power. Though the legal battles would continue, the Parkers knew they had taken the first step toward justice. The resort eventually issued an apology, and the police department began an internal investigation. But the Parkers knew that real change required more than just apologies, it required accountability. The family walked away from the resort stronger than ever, united in their fight for justice. The lessons they learned were invaluable, and they were determined to make sure that their story would be a beacon for others who faced similar struggles. They had fought for their family, but in doing so, they had sparked a movement that would inspire others to stand up against injustice.